Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Americans expect independence and impartiality from the Justice Department's number 3 official. That leader should be tough on crime, tough on drug dealers, and not a partisan who embraces double standards. As the first female senator from Tennessee, I am a firm believer in helping women succeed. 2 years ago, I was delighted to shepherd a highly qualified judicial nominee through this committee. Naomi Rao is now Judge Rao on the D.C. Circuit. She's incredibly qualified. She clerked for Justice Thomas, was an OIRA administrator, and she served as a law professor. She also happened to be the first South Asian woman to serve on what many consider the second highest court in the country. It was a historic nomination worth celebrating, but Ms. Gupta still chose to oppose Judge Rao's nomination. Another federal judge, Judge Ada Brown of Texas, was the unfortunate target of Ms. Gupta's attacks. Judge Brown had served as a state judge for several years before being elevated to the federal bench, and she too was incredibly qualified. She broke barriers as the first black female judge to serve on the North District of Texas. But Ms. Gupta opposed her too, for wholly political reasons. On one hand, Ms. Gupta claims judicial diversity must be a big priority for future presidents. That's a direct quote. In reality, she only supports highly qualified federal judges who are women of color if they agree with her politics. In Tennessee, we are fighting an opioid epidemic. Opioid deaths hit over 1,300 in 2018 and continued to surge during the pandemic. The battle against opioids will only be won if federal law enforcement leads the charge in holding drug traffickers accountable for spreading fentanyl across our communities. Certainly, we need treatment and community support for addicts, but we also need to investigate and prosecute criminals and gang leaders. If and when they're found guilty, we need federal prosecutors who will recommend tough prison sentences and judges who will ensure the punishment fits the crime. The last thing Tennesseans need is a leader at DOJ advocating for legalization of marijuana and drug crimes. We've referenced the Huffington Post op-ed in 2012 where she writes, and I quote again, "States should decriminalize simple possession of all drugs, particularly marijuana, and for small amounts of other drugs," end quote. Well, if Ms. Gupta doesn't take a very large amount of fentanyl to kill someone, a 2 milligram dose of fentanyl is enough to kill most people, according to the DEA. Fentanyl is 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. The amount of fentanyl seized at our border by CBP has tripled. This has tripled in the last 4 months compared to the same time last year. Earlier this year, the Justice Department charged 2 drug traffickers for conspiring to traffic 2.5 tons of methamphetamine and 100,000 fentanyl pills into our country. Ms. Gupta can be soft on crime at the nonprofit she runs. She can't do that at the helm of the Justice Department. Our brave men and women in uniform deserve a leader at the Justice Department who will stand up for the rule of law, consistently stand up for the rule of law. Ms. Gupta won't even stand up for victims. She supported a controversial Obama-era settlement agreement practice that diverted payments to outside groups instead of victims. And we know she won't stand up for law enforcement. Under her watch, DOJ went after local police departments even when no criminal charges were issued for officer misconduct. While Ms. Gupta sat atop the Civil Rights Division, DOJ imposed draconian consent decrees that hamstrung the ability of local and state law enforcement to effectively serve and protect their communities. Today, we are confronting a record spike in murders and violent crime in big cities, and it's clear Ms. Gupta is not fit to lead the crackdown. Violent crime and murder are on the rise in states and cities that have defunded their police force and passed strict gun laws. By last December, Manhattan had 447 killings for a year, a 41% increase since 2019, and the largest number of killings since 2011. In 2020, LA surpassed 300 homicides in a single year. For the first time since 2009, we know from past experience that Ms. Gupta's policies tie the hands of the police from effectively catching criminals. Her policies will empower lawbreakers, drug dealers, murderers who deserve to sit on death row. Our streets will be overtaken by crime, our families and our children, and neighborhoods less safe. As a mother and a grandmother, I believe that our communities deserve better. I will be opposing her nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.